Good evening.
All set.
2 weeks ago, Lar contacted me in regards to this session to ask me to share a bit more about my personal experiences and growth and my career path. So obviously, as a good Exellys alumni, I agreed to it and I made the best presentation you would see today. To start off, I quickly want to go through the table of contents so you have a bit of an idea where I'm going. And then you can also start counting off that you know when we're almost near the end. The things I want to talk about is a bit my education, how I got to where I am, the internships that I've taken, my time at Exellys, my time at my first Exellys client, Bridgestone, my time on the bench at Exellys, and my movement to Projective from Exellys. So in a very quick nutshell, I'm going to try to put some speed through it because I saw we started a bit late. So first slide, education. Obviously, you got to start somewhere. My education was in a bachelor's in electronics ICT at Artezis Planta in Antwerp from 2016 to 2019. So not that super long ago, but it feels like ages. I don't know what kind of background in schooling you have, Lawrence. Is also IT related or?
Yes.
All right.
Informatica, applied computer science.
All right. So everything I'm going to say is still applicable. Very good. The good thing I had about my education that I chose was that it was very broad. We saw a bit of everything, everything ICT related, but then also the electronics part. But later it started to bite me a bit in the ass because there was too much I saw. You saw a bit of everything. You had your fingers in all the pies out there, but you had no idea what you wanted to do. You're at the point where in your second year, you're starting your third year, you know it because you also have an IT degree. Recruiters start stalking you from every side, job opportunities get thrown at your face left and right. But I, at this point, starting my third year, my last year, still had no idea what I wanted to do, what I wanted to specialize in, what I wanted to go towards. So for myself, at the beginning of my third year, I made a list of all the options that I could pursue. And I went down to it. The developer, no, nothing for me. Line support, absolutely nothing for me. Robotics, I really enjoyed it, but I like to tinker with Arduinos, Raspberry Pis, and to find a physical job only doing that, very unrealistic. So went off the table. Electronics, again, my background before my bachelor's degree was my high school degree in electromechanics. So the electricity part has always been with me. But everything they recruit on that topic is more, for manufacturing plants, more industrialized, which is again, not my cup of tea. Then there was a startup branch. I don't know if it was emphasized at your education, but we had a really good standing with startups, or at least the teachers did. It was promoted to hell and back for us. That much that we started hating it. So startup was completely out of the question for us. Working long hours with a potential to fail, like 92% of all the startups fail before they become an incubator. Then they have another enormous amount to fail before they actually come to reality. Being independent of your company, not knowing if the paycheck is going to come. That was not the life that I wanted to live anymore. Then the two remaining were security and networking. Always liked security and networking. I had really great teachers in it. So I thought, why not take my shot there? So I started to make the idea that I wanted to go into consulting, do something in my internship from security or networking, be a consultant for a few years and become self-employed and make a lot of money in it. Now, that's not exactly how it went in the long run, but to get there, we take some steps in between. As you might have seen, I deliberately said internships because I did multiple ones. My first one was my school internship, the one that everyone who has a bachelor degree needs to do. You do your mandatory working days, you write your thesis, you present it, you pass. If you fail, you do it again next year. And you basically forget everything you learned there. I did it in a company called 3IT. It was a consultancy company in networking and security, which was 5 minutes drive from my home. So it looked like all the stars aligned. I, however, got there and the opportunity or the talks that I wanted to take was already given to somebody else. And school already locked me into that company. So I was a bit out of luck, they eventually made a new task for me where I had to investigate the ISO 27001 compliance for them so they could get the certification. It's a bit of information security compliance check where they have to check how they treat the data and whatnot that they handle. It was fun, but the funnest part about it was that I had a lot of social interaction with people, checking how they handled it, what their thoughts were. I was working more with people. That came to an end. I came to the unfortunate realization that I failed one class, that I couldn't do a retry on, and I couldn't deliberate. So I was stuck with doing a fourth year, or at least half of a next year, for only 1 day a week. I didn't want to sit idle there. As I mentioned before, IT, you get job offers left and right. So I started taking up on the offers, going for interviews, talking to them. But my mind was, for the half year that I'm sitting at home for 4 out of 5 days a week, I want to do something that matters, something that builds my CV. I want to do something in my field. So basically, I went there. I said, yeah, I want to do a voluntary internship or a part-time paid internship or whatever. I want to do something in my education that gives me an edge. And all the companies basically said, no, just wait a half a year until you're graduated and then come back to talk to us. And this is where Exellys come into play for me. They actually were the first company that said, yes, we can arrange that for you. And they placed me at Private Bank Delen for half a year to be a developer. I initially said I never wanted to be a developer. I also shared that with Exellys, but I also shared my doubts about it, that I wasn't sure if it was going to be for me or whatever. And they leveraged that, saying that this is the perfect opportunity to check. You have a 6 month duration. You have no strings attached. You can see if you like it. If you don't like it, nothing ventured, nothing lost. So I did it. I became a TypeScript developer for Bank Delen. I developed an in-tool app, which hopefully they still use to this day, whoever knows. And I enjoyed it. But I also realized that I didn't want to do that for a living. So again, I was back to square zero. After my internship at Bank Delen, I officially got hired by Exellys. There was no question. I had a very good experience with them, so I wanted to pursue it further. As I mentioned before, multiple times, the abundance of job offers was so immense that I had to start filtering out, because basically, let's be honest, 90% of the offers all offer the same thing. The variation between 3 different company cars, the variation between a wage that is very similar. So I had to check the difference somewhere else. And where I found it was the atmosphere and the general workings. It was more important for me than the offer. How I felt in the company, how I was treated, how I was managed. 90% of the other companies I interviewed at, and I mentioned that I didn't really know what I was looking for with my background. They just tried to use me to fill whatever spot they had open for the longest time to get me in there, not really mattering what I really wanted or not. That was totally not the feeling that I got with Exellys. So that's one of the first reasons that I picked Exellys. The atmosphere was amazing there. I had a very good time. It was very friendly, but not the fake kind of friendly that you get when you're trying into a clothing store and they try to sell you something. So the good kind. And then the second thing was a support team. The overhead, where you have your TDM managers, you have your help desk teams, you have everyone in Exellys who you can contact, who is there to assist you, to check up on you, to see if you're doing well. That was another big factor for me. The different trainings, the Start Smart, Grow Smart, and Lead Smart, back when I joined only the Start Smart project. With the budget that you can do your own trainings, get your own certifications in whatever field that you liked, as long as it was somewhat related to your job. So there were no limitations or constraints there either. The events, back at that point, I really didn't know that the events were good. But after half a year, pre-corona times, where we're still able to go out physically, I also realized that all the events that we've done were always very good, catered from A to Z. They were just always nice times. And then the matching the process. One of the better matching processes I've had, compared to what I said at the very beginning of the slide, where I had the feeling that other companies just wanted to put me in somewhere and get rid of me so they at least could get some money out of me. Exellys was the opposite. They would listen to me, what kind of atmosphere I want to work in, what kind of job do I want to do, and they start searching. They go with you to an interview, and if you honestly didn't like it, they would search something else. So that's also what happened for me. I think it was my 3rd or my 4th interview where I actually had a match and where I actually started my employment. And I was with Bridgestone, the mobility solutions team. Up to this point, any questions, Lawrence? Any inputs? Anything else coming from your side?
Not yet.
No? All right. So I started at Bridgestone. You might know them from the tires. It's the world's biggest and best-selling tire company for 11 years straight, I believe. What I told, when I ever told anyone that I work at Bridgestone as an IT bachelor, the first thing is that I get, what the hell are you doing at a tire company as an IT degree? And then I always go to my usual stick that I got from there as well, that blah, blah, blah. Bridgestone is not just a tire company. They make golf gear, sportswear. They made the seismic isolation for the Olympic stadiums, for earthquake dampening. And they have something that they call the mobility solutions team. This was a team that I fell under. This is a team where different kind of smaller projects were started that were renewable, resourceful, and came on a subscription base as a new sort of revenue in addition to the tires that they sell. The project I came into was Mobiflex. It was a electric bike leasing project where for a very low fee, it was not high, but for a fee, they would sell or lease you bikes from between 6 to 36 months with everything included. So total peace of mind. So that was actually a startup within Bridgestone. If you remember at the very beginning where I said I never wanted to do a startup, we kind of came full circle because I ended up doing a startup for 2 years. But it was a startup funded by Bridgestone. So it had capital backing it up. I think in the first year or after 2 years, we had assets worth of 22 million euros. So there was no issue for fund rolling it. So it kind of took away the financial stress, which make it actually the ideal opportunity and scenario for me to work on. I really enjoyed it there. I started there initially as functional and business analyst. The development team there that I worked with and the project manager were all outsourced from an Indian company. And very quickly, I realized that what they were doing was not agile as they described it, and also not working. I intervened a bit. I analyzed a lot of the stuff that they were doing. I reported it to my boss at Bridgestone. He agreed with me, and very quickly, I started taking over the IT project manager role. Eventually, we fired the other project manager. And coming up, I think this was a month and a half into the project, I became the manager of the IT side. And then at the end of the year, I was more towards the IT venture head, where anything and everything IT related came through me. This goes from managing resources to retailers to planning audits, anything and everything. My boss just said, if it's IT related, you do it. I don't want to be involved in it. So there was suddenly a lot of pressure and a lot of responsibility that suddenly came to me, who was at that point a 22-year-old, just graduated, only working for a year, who barely had any idea what he was doing. But I struggled. I took a lot of trainings from Exellys. I got some coaching, some mentoring. Leslie, my TDM, was there to assist as well. And I was actually doing very well. Bridgestone was very happy with me. I was coming towards the end of my 2 years. As you know, I think that already explained before, where you start smart, you're a consultant for 2 years, and the idea is that you either integrate or you stay as a consultant or they reposition you somewhere else. So I was coming up to my integration date. I think it was December, and then end February I had to integrate. In December, we got the news that our project had to close within 3 months of time, respectively on the exact same date that I had to integrate within Bridgestone. So we came from a situation where it was, we really like Stijn, he's doing a really good job and we want to keep him here forever on this project, to shit, we still want to keep Stijn, but we don't know where. So it became a manhunt to find me a position. In the end, there were 3 positions suggested, but nothing that fancied my tickle. So I ended up going back to the bench. The bench is not just a bench where you sit on. It's a bit of an abstract something. It's whenever you still work for a consultancy company, but you're not employed to a customer. This might sound like the ideal job where you're just being paid to sit around. But from my experience, it becomes really boring really fast. And at Exellys, I don't know how it works for other consultancy companies, but for Exellys, you're just not sitting idly around. There's 2 main tasks that are happening for you. You're doing the rematching process. For me, it was Anke who did it, who goes down a list with you to check what your interests are and where you can possibly do some interviews, go on talks, whatever. The second task that you do as being an internal on the bench is either IT related or general assistance. To give you an example, the task I worked on when I was on the bench, and I was there for 2 months-ish, was to show the training budget that the different consultants had left on an easier basis. Right now they had to mail, and then they had to request it by SAM, and you had to manually send it. We were working more on an automated IT way, so everybody could view their budget, update it on a SharePoint folder. The other one is general assistance, which can go from reserving Padel fields for Exellys consultants who want to play Padel, to packing boxes for events that you need to send out, and then going to the shop to buy the stuff that you want to put in the boxes. So just generally relieving stuff from the internal team so they can focus them on other stuff. After 2-3 months on the bench, Anke also told me that, hey, maybe what you're looking at, which was more of a management style position for me, because that's what I like or came to like at Bridgestone, is not really here for you just yet. Maybe try Projective. They advised against going to Exellys themselves and actually presented Projective, which was also something I never expected would happen. But that's how I got into Projective. I did my conversations there, my intake talks, multiples, and got hired there. Projective is very similar to Exellys, as it's also a consultancy company within the IT, but more directed towards the financial sector with more management positions on senior level. I got hired because they're trying to branch out to more junior levels. And the reason why I actually went there was because the atmosphere was very similar to, almost identical to, the one that I experienced at Exellys. They had the same training project. Do you have a question?
Yes.
Yes.
So now you're a consultant within a consulting company.
No, I'm actually not Exellys anymore. I left the payroll from Exellys and I went on the full payroll of Projective. But correct me if I'm wrong, Astrid, I do believe that there are some consultants who work under the payroll of Exellys for the payroll of Projective for the payroll of the other company. So that does happen. Why or how this is, I will go a bit further at the end of the slide of how this can happen. So yeah, is that a bit clear for you, Lorenz?
Yes.
Okay. So very similar atmosphere. The reason why I joined Exellys was also present there. So it directly clicked. They had the same training model, and I'm still able to do the same trainings that I'm doing in Exellys. So I can still do my Grow Smart and my Start Smart, in addition to some training budgets. The matching process was almost also identical. The only big difference, in my opinion, is that there is less guidance and overhead. You're not assigned a TDM. You don't have an entire crew supporting you. You don't have classes where you're in. You do have a buddy system, but as Projective is a bit more focused toward mature and senior profiles, they're more of the intention, if you have an issue, you raise it yourself. And as a new worker, sometimes it's not easy. Now, the reason why it's so similar to Exellys and why there's so many connections to Exellys and why I can still do trainings with Exellys is that Exellys was basically purchased by the Projective group a few years ago, so that Projective actually became the mother company and Exellys is the other company. Correct me if I'm mistaken here somewhere, Astrid. But they are connected in that way. So that's why we're not at war right now, that my consultancy company is fighting Exellys consultancy company. And I'm actually here able to give the consultancy company that I'm working for. Under Projective, I was placed in Euroclear. They do financial effect transactions and storage. There I started as a program support officer. My biggest fear here was that I have zero, but I mean zero financial background, that I would have no understanding of anything that was happening. But that actually was not that big of an issue. I bought some books on it. I really tried to study everything in, but I now, since I've joined, haven't done anything financial yet. So there was a lot of worries for nothing. And the main reason why I like it where I'm right now is because it's very challenging. It feels like everything I've done in the past 2 years was just child steps, and I'm finally growing into something bigger. And then I put a question mark because I've only been working there for 3 to 4 weeks. So I really cannot tell you anything more. I don't know myself yet. It's still on the grow and I'm still figuring things out there. To quickly show you, I made a line of my career path. And I'll show you later why I made it like this, where I started my education, did my internships. At the end of internship 2, I was sure, or at the end of internship 1, I was sure I wanted to do networking. At the end of internship 2, I was sure I didn't want to do developing. I finished my education. I started at Exellys. I became a business analyst, which I also never thought I really was going to be. I grew very quickly into a IT manager role. Then I grew very quickly in an IT venture managing role. Then I got benched at Exellys. I actually left Exellys for Projective, and I started as a PSO role in a completely different company I had no idea ever existed, and I have no notion of what financial things do. My biggest conclusion that I want to give you with this, what everything has been building up to, is that don't fixate yourself on a goal or an agenda that you make when you're still this young. I'm also young.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to deny that. But if I look back at when I said that I want to do 5 years of consultancy and become a self-employed network engineer, if you would told me 3 years ago or 4 years ago that I'm doing what I'm doing now, I would not have believed you. I said, that's nothing for me. That's too social. How can I even be doing it? And you only get to these rare positions by taking opportunities that get presented to you and are sometimes a bit hidden. And these opportunities that can lead you somewhere are usually opportunities with a bit of risk. When I left Exellys from the bench, that was for me one of the craziest things I've did. And when I didn't integrate within Bridgestone, was also one of the craziest things I did because I had a very comfy job there. Same with Exellys. I had also a very comfy job at Exellys. Just want to say, don't hesitate to change everything up and break the mold a bit. I'm not telling you to be reckless and to leave every company every 5 minutes, but when an opportunity presents itself and you're doubting, should I be doing it? Or you're young, you're still at the age, do it. There's nothing that's holding you back except for your own fears of failure. And if you don't try it, you'll never know. That's a bit the end conclusion I wanted to get towards. And then I have a bit of a question round from your side, Lawrence, if there's any questions or how I manage certain things or how I felt certain things going or how I perceive them.